Okay, so well, not I am going to do a recording. It's going to be one of those kinds of weeks. The two groups are now on the same topic per se, right? So where I could mesh, I have, and I can see the registration. So I decided that I'm just going to do a recording for this particular week. Now, I talked about, the groups have talked about building the whole, which was about core identity. Then we talked about finding our compass, which is about core values and understanding what those are, identifying those in order to move forward. And then last week was about opening our cells. So talking about energy, directing that energy, and talking about our desires. This week, this recording is about steering with the rudder. And the rudder is a piece that's not available in the original Let Down Your Cells that is available on the app. So with this particular metaphor, I wanted to elaborate more on how these small shifts, like we always think that change has to be so big and so dynamic, right? But there's small shifts that can align us with what our vision is or misalign us with what our vision is. So it can change our whole course in life, okay? And that happens through our discernment, through our boundaries, whether we have them or we don't. It happens through making healthy choices for ourselves, right? So the rudder is about leading with intuitive wisdom, with intuition, instead of fear-based reactions. And just last week, I did the podcast on fear archetypes, and I put something also like a presentation in the Facebook group about fear archetypes. I wanted it to be something that we could understand, like when you go on to a job interview, right? And I may be speaking in the old school way, but there's a portion where you might be asked about your strengths or your weaknesses, right? And we're usually able to kind of muddle off our strengths just like that. And we know how they can be used on the job. We know how that can be a benefit to the employer. But with our weaknesses, there's sometimes things that we don't want to admit about our weakness because we don't want it to be seen as an obstacle to getting the work done or being a great employee or making a change, right? Making an impact at that particular job. So when you talk about your weaknesses, you should be thinking about how has this weakness caused personal growth, right? So I recognize the fact that I have some difficulty with time management. And because I know that I'm not strong in that area, then I've learned to use this, and that, or I've learned to organize in this way. And then you kind of map that out. And then the way that you've grown in that area, right? So what you've learned new due to the fact that you've resonated with your weakness, you've identified it, this is how you've addressed it, and now the way that you address it can be used as a strength, right, at the job. So it's sort of the same thing with our fear. Fear is something that's natural, it's going to pop up, but it's when we're getting stuck in those loops. So, how can we take that energy of fear? How can we take those archetypes, those ways that we talk to ourselves and we move, whatever's sitting inside of us? How can we take that and grow? And how does that growth now benefit what we're doing on our journey? How does it benefit that vision that we have for ourselves? So, that's how the fear archetypes are kind of explained and brought out. And I wanted to put them in this week, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we're just going to run through the presentation really quick. Let me try to get it up on the screen. So let me share my screen. Just one moment here. And then we'll get going. Get my timer started. Okay, so this week we're talking about the rudders, which is discernment and our decision making. All right. The rudder is the part that steers the whole boat, if you don't know what that part does on the boat. So just like a rudder is small but mighty, our decisions, our boundaries, and our moment-to-moment choices, those create massive ripple effects in our lives. All right. The rudder represents our ability to make clear decisions and set healthy boundaries for ourselves, and knowing that those boundaries are loving, not just for ourselves, but the people and the environments that we interact with. So it's that part of us that helps navigate with discernment, trusting our inner knowing, and making those small but intentional shifts that can completely change our life's course. So I've said that before, just 1 degree of change, right, can put you in a whole different direction. And that's why it's important to be aware of whether you're aligned or you're misaligned, because it determines whether you drift, whether you detour, okay, or whether you reach your actual destination. So I want this video to be about recognizing when you're steering from alignment versus when you're reacting from fear or urgency, or that conscious level that leads us away from alignment, right? A lot of times our actions, we want something, but our actions are not in alignment with actually achieving or getting to that thing. We have to be able to be honest about that. That's part of that accountability, right? So discernment is that inner ability to choose between options, not just based on logic, but based on your alignment. It's not about judging yourself, okay? It's more about having clarity. So it's asking things like, does this choice support my highest good? Does it support what I have drawn out for myself? Does it support the destination that I'm on? Does it align with my values, right? The choices that I'm making, are they in alignment with my values? Does this choice support my vision? And if it doesn't, then why are we making that choice? When we move from fear-based decision making, we're asking some of those similar questions, right? Except it'll be questions like, well, what if this person is going to leave me, right? We start getting worried about if we're going to, what if I mess this up? Okay. Well, this is something that I have to do. I don't have any other choices. The truth is, we do have other choices. We just may be afraid of what we don't know. We're afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of the fact that we don't have control over the outcome. And maybe the path that we're on feels like, all right, I know what's happening here. Some people say it's better that I choose the devil that I know versus the devil that I don't know. Sometimes, that can be fear, though, that's showing up in how we're moving. So when we talk about discernment, that is rooted in our intuition, and we cultivate discernment by learning how to choose for ourselves, not based on the external noise, not based on what the family would like us to do, what they think is valuable, right? But what's going on in here? Am I feeling anxious about it? Am I feeling good about it? Is it feeling peaceful to me? Okay, because that's how we're going to learn how to redirect ourselves when we're out of alignment. And learning when to pause is actually going to come from discernment as well. Okay, so this is how self-regulation shows up in our everyday living and our everyday choices that we're making. Sometimes we may think that a major change requires that giant leap, right? But when we're aligned, it's just about having that, yeah, this feels like it's going with the flow. It is that secure no, because it's not going with the flow, right? So when we're creating those soulful boundaries, it really can shift our entire trajectory. And when we look at reflection, it also is going to play a part in whether we feel good about where we're going, what we've done, right? So we need those small shifts in awareness. We need that intention. We need that energy to realign with what our highest path is. And we've already decided what it is. If you haven't decided, that's the first thing you have to decide, right? Or you're never knowing, you're just feeling like you're going all over the place. There's a lot of things happening with no direction. So then you get into the space of feeling like you're spinning your wheels. So making the choice, and a lot of us are afraid to make the choice. You got to dig into why you're afraid to make the choice. Is it about, what is it about? Okay, so once you figure that out, you can move forward. So the rudder is not just about your logic. It's also that inner knowing, all right? So when we talk about having universal intelligence, divine intelligence, collective intelligence, right? That's something that is within us. It's something that when it's coming up onto the surface, you might be thinking, okay, I should make this turn. When you do, it feels good. Maybe thinking, wait a minute, I need to pause, kind of step back a little bit, right? And then sometimes you're feeling like, no, this is the right thing to do. I need to move now. And it's about energy. It's not about the actual time. Time is a social construct. Anyway, it's not about the actual time. It's about the energy that is available, right? You're like, oh, I don't know, something about this just doesn't feel good. So you don't move with it, right? You don't move with it. If you're thinking something about this doesn't feel good, but my person said this, right? Sometimes we move that way and it works out. Sometimes it doesn't work out. So the more grounded we are with our self-love practices and our values, then the clearer that guidance, our discernment becomes. Okay. And then what is self-love? A lot of people ask this question, and I talk about it in other areas, but just real quick, self-love is our unconditional acceptance of our strengths and our weaknesses. It's who we are and our acceptance of that. I was talking to someone, and they mentioned, I just hope I find someone who accepts this and that. Okay, first, for me, that's an indication that you haven't accepted that, right? Because you're thinking that something's wrong with who you are and it's creating some type of burden. So before someone else can even accept you, you first have to accept yourself unconditionally. And when you do that, then you move in that way. You don't move in the way that is obstructive. You don't move in the way that is a burden, right? Because you know how to handle these parts of yourself. So you don't expect the other individual to handle those parts of yourself. And that's hard. But again, accountability is something that belongs to us. Okay. So self-love is about attending to our physical, our spiritual, and our mental well-being as well. It's about really valuing ourselves without it being dependent on whether somebody else is in agreement. It's not depending on that external validation. Okay. So self-love is definitely going to look different for everyone, but it is definitely about unconditional acceptance of yourself. That's how you receive unconditional acceptance from people who align with you. Okay. So back to discernment. Discernment, let's talk about it in spiritual terms. Okay. And that is in spiritual terms, it's our use of will, because that's when we're in alignment, right? People say, oh, I want to be in the will of God, right? But that's when we're in alignment with something. So we should have this ability to surrender the need to push or have control, right? 'Cause sometimes when we're trying to control things, we're going against the energy, right? Because we think either this is the only way that this can happen, this is what I have to do, okay, for it to happen. We're not moving with the energy, and that requires us to turn inward, okay, to listen to that quiet direction that's coming from inward. When we are able to meditate, that's a vehicle for achieving that alignment for us to be able to ask a question and actually get the answer. The ask, seek, knock. It happens with us, and it can happen through meditation, having that quiet time because the answer is already there. People really don't believe that. We already have everything that we need to succeed in all the answers. But meditation is a whole conversation by itself as well. So I'm not going to elaborate on that today. You may ask, like, how do we calibrate? How are we recalibrating toward our inner wisdom instead of calibrating off of worry or fear, right? Moving from that space. And we can just simply take time to pause before we act or move forward and ask a few questions. So you see the pause and ask method here, just as simple as that. It's just a natural occurrence to worry. There's nothing wrong about having feelings of worry, about having fear. That's something that's going to happen. It's very normal. Okay. We may be worried about what we're losing. Okay. How it's going to upset somebody, and those things will come up. Okay. But We should be more concerned about experiencing that alignment and the synchronicity that's going to keep us from missing out on our fulfillment. Okay. Unfortunately, when we are worried about those external things, it can cause us to miss the boat, so to speak. Okay. So we should be concerned with, sometimes we're going to have to remove people. We're going to have to um, relocate, maybe. Okay. Um, we're going to have to address obstacles that are in the way of our best functioning. Because fear, it's often going to be loud, but fear also causes us to rush. Okay, so something as simple as being able to pause is important. It doesn't seem like a big thing, but if you start to think about decisions that you've made in the past, maybe they were rushed. Maybe you thought that you had to take advantage of something because if you didn't, then it wouldn't happen this way or it wouldn't happen that way. But when we make decisions from a point of clarity, that's going to feel more grounded. It's gonna be something that will have steadiness. Okay. It's going to be something that feels good, that feels aligned. So you really have to let your body, what's going on with your body? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling sick? Okay, because we don't listen to our body. And a lot of times our body will tell us things that are going on or when we're going out of alignment, when the energy is not good for us. Okay. So one path is going to be cloudy and maybe it's going to feel chaotic. And then one path is going to be open and it's going to bring peace. Okay. Even if there's some upset going around, even if things are not going as planned, there's still going to be a peace to it. Okay. You got to decide which one you're choosing to align with. So doing the pause and ask, is this choice rooted in love or is it rooted in fear? So being aware of those things. Does the direction reflect who I'm becoming? Right? Because making changes is going to cause some splashing in the water, right? But does it reflect who you're becoming? Does it align with that vision that you've set for yourself, the decisions that you've made? Again, what your body is saying, is it tense or open? And what's happening? Am I making this decision to avoid pain? Am I making this decision so that I won't be rejected? Am I making this decision so that it won't be viewed as failure? All of those questions matter. And just taking the time to pause. I need a moment. Give yourself a moment. So from a psychological perspective, discernment is tied to the character strengths of judgment and self-regulation. Okay, so those are the strengths. Judgment means that we're thinking critically and holistically. Self-regulation means we're able to manage our impulses and we're able to look at things long term and choose what aligns long term. And together, those two things create this clear internal steering system, right? The rudder. In the original 6 weeks, we talk about the helm. The helm is connected to the rudder, okay? Direction. So I want to reflect on turning points in life. I think this is one of those good things. So judgment, thinking critically, making choices that are based on behavior patterns for yourself. And when you deal with other people, being able to perceive energy, whether that energy feels chaotic or it feels peaceful, being able to identify opportunity for personal growth. So again, failure is an opportunity to grow and learn. It's not the end all be all. Okay. And then purposeful decision making. Again, being in alignment, having that insight and being open to the ask, the seek, the not. When you're talking about self-regulation, managing those impulses, directing your emotions, that self-regulation, being able to choose healthy ways to manage your stress, identify stress, okay, and adjusting to actions that are in alignment with your core values and being able to manage your thoughts because sometimes things are happening, right? And we can assign a feeling to it, but it doesn't need to affect us in any way. It doesn't need to become an obstacle, right? So I would encourage reflecting on some decisions that have been made in life, moments where you made a choice that maybe shifted everything in your life. Okay, I have a worksheet that's going to be posted both on the app and in the group as well. Think about when you've made a decision from fear. And how do you know that the decision is being made from fear? Maybe it feels heavy. Maybe you felt pressured to make that decision. And I want you to think about what it cost or taught you. Okay. What were the outcomes? What happened? How did you know internally, right? That's the feeling that you have of being pressured. Maybe not feeling so good after you make the decision, maybe feeling sad, maybe feeling depressed, maybe feeling like you were missing something, right? Like something just wasn't clicking correctly. And if you were making that decision again today, what would you do differently? Okay, knowing what you know now. Now you can't go back in time and make a different decision, but knowing what you know now, if the same type of situation were to occur again, because in life sometimes it does, right? Situations present itself, and a lot of people say, "What's that mean?" Like when your ex comes back or whatever, God's trying to see if you're still stupid. Now, I don't necessarily resonate with that, but I think there are things that happen, there are patterns that happen, and especially when we talk about vibration and energy, depending on where we are in life, then something's being propelled or aligned with us, and so we may meet different types of things, right? And we get the opportunity, that's what I call it, the opportunity to show our growth. Because when you recognize it, that's growth. A lot of people think, oh, I'm in a bad situation because this is happening again. But the last time you were in it, you didn't recognize it until either it was over or it had already like torn you apart. This time you recognize exactly what it is and you've developed some tools and you decided to use those tools. So that's growth in itself. Okay. So being able to, again, make that decision from clarity, like what is that able, because what you know now, that's going to contribute to clarity, right? That's going to contribute to what tools you've gained, what tools you develop. So having those tools now, how would you deal with that same situation that you dealt with before, where you felt like you were making that decision out of fear, feeling pressure? How would you address that now? Okay, hindsight's 2020. So we're using that in this reflection, all right? Think about what it taught you, like what have you learned? And allow yourself, like either journal it out or allow yourself some time for reflection. Again, there are things that happen that need to happen to put you in tune with your inner knowing. So don't forsake yourself from doing that. I like to talk about this no matter which group I'm in. It's about control versus surrender. So knowing when we should steer and knowing when we need to let it go. We naturally want to control stuff, okay? How things are going to turn out, how people act. We may want to bend rules and things like that. We naturally want to control it. Why? Because control and having control makes us feel safe, right? Knowing the outcomes makes us feel safe. It makes us feel like we're not taking a risk. But we don't always have control over every aspect of a situation. Okay, so the key is more about understanding where we are and what's going on. Understanding if we have control, what level of control we have. That's going to maximize our well-being when we're going through obstacles and stressful situations, change management. Okay, so recognizing what's within our control, right? We control our emotions, we control our choices, we control our responses. And knowing what's not in our control, that's going to be other people's emotions, other people's responses, other people's choices, other people's healing journeys and how they heal, rules of a system or, rule of systems. And we definitely don't control outcomes. So when we're overestimating control or where we see that over control, that leads to us overthinking and it leads to burnout. Why? Because we're exerting a lot of energy to something that we cannot change. Okay? When we're underestimating our control or the under control, that's causing us to be passive, and it disempowers us. It causes us to feel helpless. But we actually are not helpless. So that one thing when they say, if you let someone get you angry, or if someone does something and it can cause you to emotionally react in a way, then you've lost control, because we are accountable to how much we let that be an obstacle, right? Sometimes the way people feel about us is not something that we're going to like, but we can't change the fact that they feel that way. Are we being consistent with ourselves? Are we true to ourselves? Yes. Everyone's not gonna align with it, and it's okay. All right. But us getting worked up over that, right? Or now doing actions to try to convince just this one person that we're a good person, or this or that, you're never going to be able to do that. Okay. Sometimes you're just going to do things and people are not going to be feeling it. And so you feel helpless, like, how can I change this one person? And maybe that person is, again, going to go and share things, but all you can really do is be consistent. That's what you have control over. So that when people are experiencing you, there's a pattern of behavior that you're putting out there, just like you're evaluating other people on their patterns of behavior and their patterns of energy. Okay. So don't feel bad if you want to shape the outcome of something. That's completely natural. Okay. Especially when we're feeling vulnerable, especially when we care deeply about something, right? I think I shared that before. I don't like people lying on me. But what I have to understand is that people will tell lies for whatever reason, whether it makes them feel better, whatever they're dealing with, however they want to frame the situation, right? All I have control over is me and being consistent with who I am and what I do, and being in alignment with my own values, right? That's the only thing that I control. So I have to stay focused on that. So completely natural, but just not everything is up to us. And trying to control what we can't control just creates this unnecessary stress in our lives. Sometimes it creates confusion, especially mentally, and frustration then leads to stress, which then it physically shows up in our bodies, okay, as illness and disease. So we don't need that. We don't need that. While we may be unhappy about some things, it doesn't have to majorly affect where we're going. It doesn't have to stop our direction, doesn't have to stop our movement. All right. So start noticing those things, where you're oversteering, where you're surrendering maybe too soon, and how you can conserve your energy for the things that are truly yours to guide. Sometimes we get too involved in other people's situations, right? And so we're frustrated by them not making this decision, or not doing this, or not listening to this, right? But we don't control other people's journeys. We don't, even if they seem similar to ours. And maybe the decisions that seem like a no-brainer to us because perhaps it worked for us. I always say, again, we don't have all the information. We only have all the information for us. We don't have all the information for the other individual. So there may be reasons why they're not choosing that action. Maybe they don't want to hurt our feelings by saying, oh, that's not going to work for me, right? Had the same an example I will give is like going vegetarian really helped my health a lot, but it doesn't mean it's going to help the next person, but it's something that resonated for me and worked for me. And what I learned is each individual, some people are even allergic to meat. Each individual has to do what works best for them. Okay. And a lot of that has to do, whether you want to admit it or not, has to do with what we're thinking about. Yeah, our thoughts. Okay. So again, this is how we start aligning, okay, and aligning strengths. Aligning strengthens our discernment. So know what you have control over, know what you need to surrender to maximize your well-being while you are going through difficult situations, or even when life is just going good. Yeah. Difficulty is it's just discomfort. All right. So think about what's going on with you right now. Okay. Um, what we don't know is we can ask a lot of questions and actually get the answer to those questions, whether it be by things that we listen to, things that we read, things that we hear, conversations that we have, but we will get the answer. And since if you're looking at things in a way that we are connected to everything, that universal consciousness, that inner knowing, we are connected to in a deeper sense. And so therefore that answer can come to things. Now, there's a thing, okay, look, for some reason the tarot community gets in like all of these tiffs or whatever about stealing this info or that info. And maybe people do, I don't know, because I'm not in the tarot community in that way, right? I'll just be scrolling my thing and I'll see some posts like that, right? And I always find that funny because if everyone's connected to collective knowledge, right, then wouldn't some of the energies that you're tapping into, like, wouldn't it be very similar? So I don't know. But again, I wouldn't be able to say that on authority because I don't operate in that community. But it's just something that I wonder. Anywho, what shift is your inner knowing asking for right now? Okay. It could be something subtle. Maybe there's a mindset shift. Maybe there is a lifestyle boundary. Maybe a conversation that needs to be had. Maybe a direction that needs to be changed. Maybe there's a truth that needs to be accepted. I know there was a time with religion and spiritual practices and things like that, where I was like on the fence about something, right? And I needed some answers to that. And so it's like, well, I have to make a decision because this really dictates, what aligns with me and what doesn't align. This doesn't align. I don't think anything is wrong with it. It just doesn't align. However, there are people who are not going to be happy about me taking this path or whatever, right? So I may get some comments. I may get kicked out of my family, right? It was that way. And I was afraid of losing friends, losing family, losing connections. I was afraid of that. So I didn't want to make the choice that aligned for me. But it caused more stress and more frustration. And so finally I just decided to align. Like, it's there. It's right here. I asked for the answer. I've gotten the answer several times. I'm gonna have to move past this fear. So what is the shift that's needed for you right now to make a transition, to decide to move in alignment with the vision that you have? What shift is needed? Do you need to have the full answer for the who, what, where, why, and how? No, not necessarily. But once you start asking that question, you'll start getting pieces of those answers. And then once you identify pieces of the answer, you'll be able to figure out ways to overcome, right? Ways to manage. Either it's going to be fear or it's going to be stress. Maybe it's going to be health. Okay. But you'll be able to figure out, how am I going to manage this rather than sitting at a standstill and not being able to move forward towards your destination. Okay. So use it as journaling or break down some steps. Okay. Like, maybe I need to have this conversation. Maybe I need to view this in a different way before I can move forward. All right. So start thinking about things like that. That was going to be a discussion that I would have in the live session. So definitely reach out if you have questions. I always like to end with an affirmation. What do I want you to take with you? I definitely want you to, anything is possible. Anything that you think of is possible. If you think that you can't, then you cannot, because you won't actually try and you won't choose the actions that align with making it happen. Okay. I also like affirmations, and I use them in this series because a lot of the times it's the first step to transforming our thought process and how we are speaking to ourselves. Okay, there's a lot of things that we tell ourselves that are not true. So, and I don't know if people are into hypnotism or not, but there are therapists out there who can work with you in a different way. Okay, because it's not just about, most people know hypnosis in an entertaining way. Like if you would go to a comedy show and then they hypnotize you and they tell people to do stuff and they do it, but they don't remember. But it can actually be something therapeutic and beneficial to you, and people work with you in that way because it's about calming a portion of the brain that allows you to let go, right? So it shuts that part down that's like logical and that has the scrutiny. And so it's able to shut that part down, lets you let go of those patterns that you know of, and then you're able to adopt positive suggestions or healthier behaviors. Some people do it through subliminals, some people do it through how you see the hypnotist give this, okay, I'm not going to do this or I'm not going to do that. And then that becomes the action that you're doing. A lot of athletes do it. People in entertainment do it. But it has to be something that you want to do as well. So there's a portion of it. Anywho, if you're interested, you have to find a professional. And I would suggest that you check those people out. Okay. Look at reviews or people that they've worked with before. All right, because you wouldn't want somebody inserting something that doesn't work for you. But again, you have to want that. You have to be open to that. Some people say, I guess there's some ways that you can't be hypnotized either. It has to do with how the brain works. A lot about our lives has to do with our nervous system, okay, and how things are firing. So if there's an impairment with that, then you may not be able to be hypnotized. Anywho, I'm not promoting it, condoning it. I'm just saying it is a modality that is available. Okay, let me be real clear. But affirmations are a way of self-hypnosis, right? It's a way to change the inner conversation, to transform and reframe, okay? So that can be a step forward to transforming your thoughts, reframing how you view a situation. So that's why I like using the affirmations. And for this one, it's I trust my inner knowing, I choose with courage. My small shifts shape my intended path. And that's helping us to understand that small shifts show up in a big way. Okay, so even if we don't think we're doing anything major in our lives, it can end up affecting us in a major way. All right. So next session, we're going to talk about the cargo, our cargo. We'll dig a little deeper into fears. So maybe I'll be able to infuse a little bit of the fear archetypes in there. We'll do that. We'll unpack some beliefs and emotional baggage that keeps us from moving forward and selling freely, I will say, as well. This week, if thoughts creep in about things not going well for you, or you're feeling behind, you're talking to yourself in that way, I can't do this, or this never happens for me. You notice that type of conversation coming up for you, or that type of thought coming up for you. Try to follow that sentence, that or that thought, with an acknowledgement that your direction is adjustable. Okay, it's not this doesn't have to be it. You can make a change to it. You can make a shift for it. Okay. And that way you can get yourself into thinking of, well, what do I want that shift to be? What can it be? You can make that bridge to get to that thought. All right. So I hope everybody's having a great Sunday. Reach out to me, Shay's Pretty Skinny at iCloud.com. That's the email. You can find me on social media as Shay Toastin as well. Okay. Have a good one.